Hi, everybody. Jay Privman, the national correspondent from Daily Racing Form. I'm in South Florida for the Fountain of Youth Stakes on Saturday, and Mike Watchmaker currently in New York, but he'll be coming down here to join me as well. And the Fountain of Youth, Mike, this is one of two big races that should impact our Derby Watch top 20 this week. It looks like there's going to be a field of about 11 in this race, including 4 horses who are in our Derby Watch top 20, including the 1-2 finishers from the Holy Bull in Irish War Cry and Gunnevera. You've got Practical Joke making his first start of the year. And you've got 3 Rules stretching back out around 2 turns. So looking at those 4, who do you think are the ones to beat?
Well, Jay, we're talking about this race before it's actually drawn, so we don't know the post positions, which are important in 2-turn races at Gulfstream Park. That said, Irish War Cry is absolutely much the horse to beat. His race in the Holy Bull, I thought, was a very strong performance. Granted, he got away with an easy, relatively uncontested early lead, but I don't think he's the kind of horse that has to have the early lead. I just think he just fell out on it because no one else wanted it. And I think he could be equally effective sitting off the pace. And in fact, I would suspect that's the strategy he'll use. But he's now undefeated in 3 starts. It was a strong performance on his part in the Holy Bull. And I know that the Fountain of Youth isn't the main goal, but I still think he's much, much the horse to beat.
And the horse who finished second behind him, Gunnevera, I thought he ran on well in that race. It's very hard to make up ground at Gulfstream Park. I think he'll probably be up against it on Saturday in the Fountain of Youth owing to the track profile. But I think this horse might be flying slightly under the radar and might be a little more highly regarded if he had sort of name connections behind him. But I think to overlook this horse, I think would be a dangerous thing moving towards the Kentucky Derby. But another horse in here, Mike, who I think is going to attract a lot of attention, and deservedly so on Saturday, is Practical Joke. Now, we haven't seen him since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but prior to that, he won the Champagne Stakes. Now, his first 3 races were all around 1 turn. His 1 loss was around 2 turns. I think there's something to that, but I'm also willing to see how he has progressed from 2 to 3 when he comes out at 1 1/16 of the Fountain of Youth. Where do you stand on Practical Joke?
I have the same reservations you do, Jay. I mean, I was a little bit concerned that he made a run in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, his 2-turn debut, and he didn't really sustain it through the stretch run. Now, the first 2 finishers of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile did kind of draw away from the field, but I didn't think Practical Joke sustained the move that he made. And so I think jury's really out if he's as effective around 2 turns. I think he's a good horse. He's the horse that won the Hopeful Stakes, the Hopeful that Classic Empire wheeled coming out of the gate and dumping his rider. Practical Joke was the one who won that. And so that was a win kind of with an asterisk, but I thought his Champagne was very, very good. And he beat a very nice colt in Syndergaard in that day.
You just like Syndergaard because he's named for one of your favorite Mets players.
Well, there is no question about that. I plead guilty. But at the same time, I thought it was a strongly run Champagne. But it was a 1-turn mile, and we're talking about a different animal here. So I share your reservations about Practical Joke, and I also share your desire to see him show more in a 2-turn race.
Another horse who needs to prove himself around 2 turns against top company is 3 Rules. Now, in his first start as a 3-year-old, he finished second in the Swale Stakes. He ran in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, as did Practical Joke. He did not run well. He's had 2-turn success at Gulfstream Park. I'm willing to give him a mulligan for that Breeders' Cup because it was at the end of a long campaign. But he has to prove he can run against horses of this quality. So to me, this is a pivotal race for 3 Rules. Where do you come down on him?
Well, first off, the good news. I thought 3 Rules ran terrific when second in the Swale in his seasonal debut. Now, he didn't have overt trouble in the race, but from a strategical standpoint, he pulled a dirty trip, and I thought he ran very well under the circumstances. Now, you pointed out that he is a 2-turn stakes winner at Gulfstream Park, but that was the last race in the Florida Stallion Series, and it was a woeful field. I mean, it was not a good one at all. And yeah, 3 Rules won the race by a double-digit margin, but I really think much of that was a function of who was lined up in the gate with him. I think 3 Rules is most effective as a sprinter, and I think we're probably going to find that out on Saturday.
The other big race that should impact our Derby Watch top 20 on Saturday is the Gotham Stakes. This is at Aqueduct, and once again, Mike, we've got a race at Aqueduct during this intertrack season in which El Arib looks like he's the one to beat. Do you think he'll get the hat trick and win again?
Well, he might. We keep on expecting him to run against a stronger field, and while I haven't had the chance to look at the past performances of Gotham, I do know the names that were entered against them, and I'm not sure that it's necessarily that much of a stronger field than he's been beating. I mean, he won big in the slop 2 starts back in the Jerome. He had an absolutely perfect trip, but he dominated in the Withers last time out. The horse who finished second in the Withers, Prime Timber, had a terrible stumble at the start and ran very well under the circumstance. But there was a big gap between him and El Arib at the finish, and I just don't know that could be turned around in this race. And who knows, El Arib might win it again and get a 93 buyer.
He has certainly been the king of New York so far, as El Arib this winter. Well, that's our look at both the Fountain of Youth and the Gotham Stakes, our preview of those 2 races this weekend. Also here at DRF.com, you can find our recap of last week's Risen Star Stakes. And for all the coverage on the road to the Kentucky Derby, make sure you go to DRF.com. For Mike Watchmaker, I'm Jay Privman. We'll see you next week.